let's talk about your new album, After the Head Rush.
Speaking of bull testicles on pickup trucks, what a pivot.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today I'm with a guest all the way from Canada, and by the time this comes out, there will actually be a few other Canadian artists that have been on the podcast. He's a rock and roll artist, and even though he's from Canada, he actually has quite a few ties to Seattle. So we're going to be covering that. We're going to be covering his aesthetic and how his influences tie into that as well, and we'll touch a little bit on his come up. It's my pleasure to introduce Art Deco.
Hello.
There we go. That was a pretty good intro for this morning, man. I've been I'll be honest with you, I stayed out until I was going to spend the night in Seattle because I live an hour outside of Seattle. And I decided at 3 a.m. I'd rather sleep in my own bed. And now we're here. You know what I mean? Like, do you ever are you someone who can sleep anywhere? Because I feel like I need to feel comfortable in the space.
I mean, you're asking a musician. I've tried to catch some Z's. I'm first of all, I'm a horrible sleeper, so I probably have some kind of undiagnosed sleep apnea or something. There's times where I've woken up full on gasping for air. So if you're a doctor out there listening, refer me to a sleep clinic. No, but I wear contact lenses. I have horrible vision. I've got a whole routine before bed in order to properly, catch the angel train.
Wow.
So yeah, but I mean, when you're on tour, you're sleeping poorly, you're eating poorly. It's just a total beat down on your body. And this last tour especially, we had this extra row of seats that the boys named Deep Space. So you put on some earplugs and you go into deep space, and we went and got a bunch of pillows at Walmart or whatever, and so we just pillowed it out, and it's this beautiful little cocoon, and I actually caught some very good sleep in deep space. So I'm getting better at catching sleep anywhere. But yeah, it's sleep's important.
Yeah, I sleep with 9 pillows. I'm kind of a wild man with that. But I also feel like I'm young and I don't need sleep, to be honest. It just takes me a little bit to get up. But I'm going. I'm good and going. I got some coffee, and we're here.
Dead Schmed, you'll sleep when you're dead.
Yes, 100%. So let's start with your connections with Seattle. So you've performed at KEXP, a live performance. Congratulations on that. And your first festival was at Bumbershoot.
Actually, the first festival was at this. It only lasted 1 year, but back in 2017, there was this brief festival called Upstream.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You remember that one?
Yeah.
It might have done 2 years, but I think it was the previous one of the guys who founded maybe Microsoft.
Bill Gates. I think Paul Allen. It was either Paul. I think it was Paul Allen.
It was Paul Allen, who passed away, but he was a big music guy. So it was Paul Allen. Yeah.
So did you do Bumbershoot at all, or did you do Upstream?
We did Upstream, and then with a slightly different backing band on a different album swing, I came back in 2019, played Bumbershoot, another festival, RIP. And KEXP was back in 2019. So it's been a hot minute. When was the last time we played Seattle? I honestly can't remember, but we have a show coming up in September.
Oh, what? You gotta come on. You gotta come to my studio. I just opened a new studio in downtown Seattle. You gotta come by.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What kind of studio?
It's a multi-media studio. So it has a podcast studio. It has a music recording studio. It's an art gallery. It has a DJ booth. It's got a bar. It's I'm very proud of it.
You had me at hello.
So how did that's crazy. I hope it's not RIP to Bumbershoot. They were supposed to put it on this year, but Seattle's really weird with their music politics, and I guess they promoted that it was coming back, and then it's not back this year. So some things like that, once once you say it once and then it doesn't come back, it's just like a snowball effect of it. Eventually, it's gone down the mountain and it's never to return. I don't know if that's the right analogy at all, because I guess if it's a snowball effect, it gets bigger and then.
Or sometimes the snowball grows legs and walks to another town.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on.
Yeah.
But we have a hockey team now, which I don't know if anyone asked for, but we got that. So.
Well, you're talking to a Canadian, so I'm
have you
very aware of the NHL franchise in Seattle.
What do you think of the Kraken?
I love it. I love that KEXP's programming the in-house live music. Probably one of the best live, like, in-house sporting experiences. I've heard good things. I hear Las Vegas has a pretty sick in-house kind of experience. Something about Americans and their NHL productions.
Right.
They almost got to jazz it up in a way, because the game's probably so boring for half those people. Not in your DNA in the same way that it is for us Canadians, but yeah, I would love to go to a Kraken game.
Yeah.
Maybe when they play my Canucks.
And when they fucking lower the prices, supposedly, like, it might be because it's the first year, or maybe hockey's just expensive, but supposedly going to a Kraken game is just like a crazy expensive thing to go to.
It's always expensive. Like, I lived in Vancouver for 10 years. I don't think I ever bought a hockey ticket, but I would always go to games through friends and whatever. And it was like, I can't believe this game would have cost like $200-$300 and up. Parking and the dinner before the game and the drinks after and the food and the drinks in the arena, like, that's all on top of it. But like, just the ticket price is like $275.
How long is a hockey game?
Runtime, it's like 1 hour runtime.
What?
But, like, yeah, 3 20-minute periods. Just like basketball is like a 1 hour, but with all the bullshit and the intermissions, it's like a 2.5 hour piece of entertainment. I feel like that's kind of like the maximum attention span for any sort of event. Like, if you go to a rock concert and it's more than 2.5 hours, like, I might even leave.
Yeah.
Like, do you need to? And most legacy artists are pushing that. Like, I know Bruce Springsteen just ate a bunch of shit on Twitter, and his manager came to the defense of the $5,000 ticket price that Live Nation was charging. And I've started to see that, like, for legacy artists, they'll just get bought out for a whole tour.
Yeah.
A lot of them are selling their publishing, and they're kind of like keeping arm's length from like the business dealings. And I know that like Live Nation has like these corporate deals with like Amex and stuff like that, and there's like special mailing lists, and there's different so behind the scenes they're crunching all these numbers and like, well, we could probably get away with like the first couple rows of the stadium being like ultra VIP fan experiences. Some rich asshole is probably gonna like flies helicopter in from the Hamptons, go to this MSG thing and pay $5,000 and not even bat an eyelash.
Yeah.
And then of course that like gets leaked to the public. It's like no regular Bruce Springsteen fan is going to drop $5,000. Like, the working class people are not going to spend that, and we're going to be in revolt about it. But at the same time, I'm like, there are tickets to the opera and musical theater and plays and stuff that are abnormally priced for the 2.5 hour experience. But yeah, we spend a crazy amount of money for like 2 hours of entertainment, whether it's a hockey game, a football game, the opera, a Bruce Springsteen concert. Like, it's pretty expensive what we allocate for that are brain dazzled.
I feel like for whatever reason, like mentally, I'd be prepared to spend more money at an opera than Drake for some reason. Maybe because it just seems more fancy or something.
Yeah. Well, you could dress. How would you dress to go to the opera in your fanciest attire? I'd love to see you wear that to a Drake concert.
Yeah, fuck. I'm trying to
show up with like a powdered wig, like your cheeks all rosy, like in the 17th century or something.
Dude, do black people do what did fancy black people look like that weren't slaves? Like, were they Were they like I guess Django? Have you seen Django? I guess that's
Yeah,
what
Django Unchained.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe they wore something like what he wore, like the blue. I'd wear that. What Django wore, the blue outfit.
Yeah.
When he killed those first slave masters on the like when he had the what's that guy's name? Christoph Waltz.
Oh,
He had
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
sniper and he sniped that guy from like how many yards away and he's like on the horse. That was craziness.
You should show up in that outfit on a horse to go
Yes.
to a Kraken game. Like,
Yes,
I'm an
100%.
esteemed gentleman. I have tickets in row 3. Cost me $5,000. Release the
Can
Kraken.
my horse come in?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wrote a whole album about our relationship with the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I attempted to. And it's just like it's crazy. Like some people will spend, just use the lazy example, $5,000
Mhm.
on concert tickets, but they won't spend $5,000 on a better like health insurance package,
Mm.
or $5,000 for a better, features in their car that'll last 10 years.
Yes. One of
But
my
they'll be
friends.
like, oh, I gotta see Bruce Springsteen front row before I die. $5,000, done.
I don't think people know how to spend money, to be honest. Like for example, my one of my friends worked like all summer doing construction, like overtime, anything he could get. And he saved up a big chunk of money and he decided to spend all of it on a car instead of what he could have done. Could have still got the car, but could have leased the car or something and then put that money towards because he had enough money to put a mortgage down on a house.
Whoa,
And he just put all that money into a car.
a depreciating asset.
Yeah. Let's make
I I wish like financial literacy was taught in the curriculum in school. Like I'm sure there are private schools, and I went to public school. I didn't,
Mm,
grew up like in the burbs in Canada. Like I, public school here was perfectly acceptable education, I think. But one of
mm.
the things that I wish they kind of found room for, maybe just like stop teaching cursive writing and replace that with financial literacy.
Yeah.
Like just knowing how like just basic financial literacy. Like we're talking like some people don't realize that when their credit cards, how interest being compounded in more periods will take money out of their bank account
Hmm.
in like exponential kind of ways, or like how to save for things, or just how the stock market works in the most basic way.
Yeah.
I think that would be like kids would realize the value of a dollar. Um,
I took
and
I,
yeah,
I took a personal finance class in my high school year, my senior year, which I did find very helpful. Do I remember everything? No. But I will say this, in our community that we're in, like art, right? I wish there was more of like a organization or something that taught artists how to budget or how to get partnerships or sponsorships and all this because I'm able to get that through podcasting and now I have artists in Seattle being like how can I get that as an artist, right? So I wish there were more resources like that. But then I also just had on this band called Vox Rea. I don't know if you know who they are. They're from
oh yeah,
Canada.
from Vancouver, yeah.
Um, and they were saying that Canada actually supports artists more. There's like organizations that fund your guys' ventures or whatever. Or
Yeah, there's like a couple of so each province has a music organization. In BC here we've got Music BC. They give out grants. They get a whole pool of money from government, plus I don't know where they get their money from. I should know this. I think tax revenue,
mm,
arts councils, they allocate, here's some money we're going to give to an organization, and they're going to run as like a nonprofit, and their mandate is to invest into BC artists and fund their some of their touring endeavors, some of their travel endeavors. And there's a whole bunch of people that, if you meet this certain eligibility, You don't even need to be a member of Music BC to apply for some of these grants.
Mm.
You just need to kind of check off some residency boxes, and yeah, you can apply for funding for a bunch of stuff. And then nationally, there's this program called Factor, and Factor is like an acronym for something. I don't know, Foundation of blah 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 blah. And they get their money, I believe, a mix of radio broadcasters
Mm.
and the government. And that pool of money can fund anything from touring and showcase grants to recording grants, music video grants. So it's a whole organization. It's, you know, like hundreds of millions of dollars just getting pooled and thrown into the arts, investing in Canadian artists. And these grants, they really are a game changer. They're quite
Mm.
controversial because even artists that are like super successful and famous and don't really need the extra help can apply for them, and their labels usually do.
Mm.
So if you're Drake or you're you know, Justin Bieber, if those guys are still living in Canada and still paying taxes in Canada, I think that's the only requirement. Don't quote me on that.
Mm-hmm.
They can get like a chunk of money from Factor or the Ontario Music, wherever they, whatever province they live in. So yeah, no, it's good. I've been the beneficiary of some of these grants. They help create music assets and support, you know, Canadian artists to try and compete and get to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
They're really, really, really helpful. But yeah, I mean, the first 10 times I applied for these grants, I never got them. And then I had to kind of like learn how to fill out these applications. And it's a bit daunting when you're a musician. You're not financially literate. Most
Yeah.
musicians, even some that I work with, like didn't even graduate high school. So just like looking at a piece of paper like this with numbers and financial stuff and putting together a marketing plan and all that, it's just like, it makes you go cross-eyed.
Yeah. What's kind of wild to me is that like even artists such as Drake or Kendrick Lamar or bands or whoever, right? They still need like a marketing budget. So if you're like an up and coming artist, it's once you kind of, I think you should, any up and coming artist should know like the actual steps or the relative steps, because there's no straight line to becoming a successful artist. But like if an artist is like, oh, I'm just gonna make music and make it, versus realizing you have to have a marketing budget and all this stuff, I think it'll help certain people think more realistically about their goals, right? And when Kendrick Lamar dropped his the first music video for his new album, this is super simple. It's kind of silly, but for the first hour, his music video only had 9,000 views. And then related to Eminem, when he dropped like, I forget what music video it was, just for his Music to Be Murdered By album, like a year or two ago. Within like 30 minutes, it had like 400,000 views, right? So Kendrick and Eminem are honestly on the similar level of their reach. So for the first hour, it only had 9,000, but then by 3 or 4 hours later, it had a few million. So what I thought was like possibly the marketing budget wasn't there at the very, like right away, for it to have 9,000 within the first hour versus Eminem, who had 400,000 within the first hour. So like looking at that different types of stuff, where like, you know, like even like Drake's numbers aren't, without any marketing, aren't going to be the same compared to with marketing. So like, I think artists kind of get discouraged by numbers, but also you should be looking at like the marketing budget that some of these artists have.
Yeah, I mean, the marketing budgets on a major label, um, even a major, like sort of air quotes, a major indie label in the
Mm-hmm.
States, like they're yeah, it's crazy how much more money gets dumped into those artists. Like not tens of thousands, it could be in the millions. But
Yeah.
those artists are also making like exponentially more money than your little CanCon indie rock band from
Mm.
Canada. I will say this though, like music marketing is not a boilerplate endeavor. It's amphibious and it
Mm.
moves, and it's sometimes the marketing strategy will change within a campaign even, and you have to be constantly on your toes. And sometimes you're competing with artists that have full on like social media teams and data analysis teams that look at, sift through Spotify data.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're getting streams in the tens of billions, you're able to look at all sorts of stuff that you've got such a sample size. So yeah, the it's interesting to kind of see the machinations and little schemes be in the major label networks versus the old fashioned kind of small indie rock label
Right.
that's like pumping out an indie record that's got like, okay, we've got 10 grand on ads. How do we spend those effectively? Do we go to Facebook? Do we go to Spotify ads? Versus like an artist that's like literally got a billboard budget. Okay, we're gonna put one up in Times Square for 7 grand a day, and then one in LA, and then it's like can't even compete.
Yeah, that's wild. So when you first came to Seattle, were you part of any record label or any management, or how did you get connected with Seattle to do Upstream?
So I self-released an album
Mm-hmm.
in 2016 called Day Fevers. And Music BC was doing a showcase at Upstream, and I applied to get on that showcase. I didn't have a label, didn't have a manager, didn't have an agent, didn't have anything. Just had this album that I'd self-released. I got onto that showcase. And at that showcase, it went really well. I remember kind of sort of establishing within like the Western Canadian music scene that, there's something happening here, I guess. And then we did another showcase at this festival in Victoria called Rifflandia.
Mm-hmm.
And at that showcase, there was an agent named Aaron who worked at Pecan. And he said that he really liked the live show, loved the record. And I was like, well, I'm working on a new record right now, but I'd love to release this new record. It's going to be called Trespasser. I can send you the masters. I need help shopping it around. I know nobody. And he's like, well, let me see if I can get you a manager. So he sent the record to a guy named Brendan McCartney who loved it. And he said, if I can get you a record deal, I'll become your manager. This is how it kind of works. You meet one person that believes in you, and they might have a connection to a few more people, and they might have a connection to a few more people, and it just kind of gets passed around. But Trespasser, no one had heard it. Aaron ended up becoming my agent. Brendan ended up sending it to a few labels in Toronto. One of them was called Paperbag Records, which is kind of an iconic Canadian indie rock label. They've been around now for 20 years. Their first signings were a band called The Stars and another band called Broken Social Scene. This is their first two releases were like these two iconic kind of like Canadian albums that came out in the early 2000s. And they've since released like a lot of really, really awesome music. And so I thought there's no way this label is going to like Trespasser, but sure enough, they loved it and they signed me. Brendan became my manager. The rest was kind of history. So from Upstream, it kind of became this catalyst for things falling in line. And by the fall of 2018, like a year later, I had a little bit of a team and a little bit of, a place to start from, and release Trespasser. And KEXP got on board with that record and spun it a bunch, and I'm very grateful for that. And they invited me in to do a session back when I was still rocking the Andro Glam Rock kind of Bob Wig look. And Seattle's kind of like a little bit of like a second home, not just geographically, but I got a lot of fun memories and a connection to Seattle.
Hell yeah, that's awesome, man. I want to talk a little bit about the time in between getting on this record label, because those are super cool connections and all that, right? But that wasn't like an overnight thing. You had been making music for a while. So to like paint a clearer picture for the audience, how long had you been making music before that opportunity arose?
Well, when I was like a teenager living in Victoria, um, I had taken a lot of piano lessons when I was really, really young. Didn't really discover classic rock full on until I was working in kitchens, doing summer jobs. And when you work in a kitchen, it's like having you feel like you're part of a gang. It's I don't know. I feel like whenever I hear Anthony Bourdain like romanticize about his like youth years working in kitchens in like you know Providence or Rhode Island or wherever he was doing that. I kind of get nostalgic too because that
Mm.
mirrors a lot of my experiences working in a kitchen. Rock and roll is a big part of it. You have the kitchen stereo when the rush is over, you crank rock and roll tunes. Back then it was CD binders. I'm flipping through it. I'm like, all this music has just melted my brain. So of course I go and I spend one of my first paychecks buying a guitar and an amp I still play with and record with, and it's part of the Art Deco touring sound is this Fender Hot Rod Deluxe amp that I've had since 2000.
Nice.
And that led to me in my late teens moving to Vancouver, playing in indie rock bands. This is all throughout like the 2005 to 2012 era of like indie sleaze, a lot of asymmetrical haircuts and
Mm.
skinny jeans and angular guitar music and playing in other people's bands, and then eventually getting burnt out and moving to the Gulf Islands, which is where I kind of just like quit music and I'm just going to take care of my grandmother who has Alzheimer's, and
Mm.
that in a weird way, and I've talked about it a bunch, but the kind of the Coles notes of that era was to kind of calm my grandmother down while she was having panic attacks, sundowning, they call it.
Mm.
I'd play piano for her. And in those moments of playing piano, I started like reconnecting with music on my own terms. And when she got put into a home, I would spend like long hours in this big empty house just writing tunes on the piano. And that became sort of like the early Day Fevers era of my music, of this like Art Deco journey. So from 2013 all the way to releasing Day Fevers, it was just me demoing and writing and kind of reconnecting with music, and taking trips to the mainland and going in the studio and kind of collaborating with like a producer and some a backing band of musicians, and
Mm.
yeah, just kind of going full on in earnest probably around 2016 when I released Day Fever. So it was like it's been a good 10-year journey of nose to tail, this Art Deco kind of journey, and before that it was another decade of grinding it out in the indie rock scene in Vancouver.
Yeah. See, I think that's important for other artists and fans to hear. Like, I feel like things like that are very inspiring, and I feel like it shows that you're a true artist. That like at the end of the day, art is what helped you find peace, and you went back to it. Versus might sound corny as fuck, but a lot of because music is such an easy platform to pick up nowadays, I feel like there are so many artists that do it for the wrong reason.
Right. I mean, if it was for the getting rich reason, then I definitely not rich yet.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's definitely not the fame reason.
Mhm.
No, it's I don't know. It like music. I've just been ever since when I think I was like six years old moving across Canada with my family. I was born in Ottawa, Ontario, and when we moved across Canada,
Mhm.
coast to coast almost, it was me and my dad in this like U-Haul, 5-ton moving truck. My mom and my two sisters following in this like crappy like 1989 Ford Tempo, and me and my dad listening to AM radio across Canada. And it's like I just fell in love with golden oldies. And my dad's like I was like obsessed with like a few songs.
Mhm.
and would sing them at the top of my lungs and ask him, when is that song coming back on? And he had to explain that radio is like, you just don't know when the song is going to come back on. And I just remember just like loving hearing music and singing along, and that drove me headfirst into like wanting to learn an instrument. Okay, let's give little art piano lessons. So music's just been a part of my life since
Hmm.
day one. And yeah, I just found sheet music that I'd written. Like I wrote a song when I was like 9, and
Hmm.
it's like this really crappy sheet music that is just like 3 notes and then 3 notes, and I haven't tried to like learn it to see what chords they are. I should.
You gotta
I
frame
just
it.
look. I should frame it. Yeah, and I think I called it Nocturne because everything you're learning at that age is like a nocturne or a sonata.
Hmm.
Anyways, but yeah, I was always kind of channeling my crazy hyperactive imagination into melodies and songs. So
I,
it's hard to wash it off my skin. Every time I tried to leave, it sucked me back in.
mhm. I want to touch on burnout a little bit, and then I have a few questions about your grandma actually. Um, what is some advice you'd give to artists about burnout, and when did you start realizing you were feeling burnout? Was it from certain letdowns, like a label being like, "We're gonna sign you," and then pulling back, or were people not showing up to your shows, or was it issues with bandmates, or what caused your burnout?
I mean, a little bit of all of that. I
Mm,
think so. I was 29,
okay.
28 years old. I'm 38 now. So I was 28 years old. I'd been slogging it out in the indie rock scene. And 8 years in a scene is like you see multiple iterations of shit. It's all cyclical. And it's like you've seen multiple trends come and go, not just fashion wise, but musically, sonically. You've seen bands come out of nowhere and get signed and just like leapfrog over everything you're doing. Playing music is also really expensive.
Mm,
It's incredibly expensive. It's even gotten more costly. So, if you're some scrappy 20-year-old man, you're okay eating like Taco Bell every day for 3 weeks, and you've got like just like a shitty job you don't care about at home, and you're kind of you're able to sort of make it work, and maybe you find 3 or 4 other like-minded individuals that you pool what little money together you have to buy a van, and you're okay like sharing a bed or sleeping on dirty floors or like just figuring a way to get out on the road, like that whole kind of like fable of like the band that just like really slummed it for a couple of tours, and then they built that draw organically. Next thing you know, they're like buzzing and there's a lineup around the block. Like it's such a fallacy. Like that's not how it works for most bands. Like most
mm,
bands, you come back from said tour, you're burnt out, you're tired, your body's falling apart, you're malnourished, you're all your shifts at the restaurant or at the retail store or whatever, day job you had have gone to someone else, or you've been taken off the schedule, or you've been fired. So now you're like stressed about making rent, so you're going to find another job. And yeah, and then it's like it's hard to keep that band together. It's hard to even get rehearsals
mm,
because someone's on the verge of losing their job, or there's financial crisis or relationship drama. So you get burnt out through just the financial aspect of it, which in turn interferes with the creative output because you've got to maybe work a second job, and there's no time to rehearse, there's no time really to write, and it just starts to compound,
yeah.
and it gets really, really, really difficult. And then even back then, there really wasn't the same sort of music technology available to record at home. So there was the added stress of like, we gotta get a demo, we gotta get an EP together, we gotta record something in a studio, and then you gotta pay someone to get it mixed, to get it mastered. That's a whole other investment.
Hmm.
So in here in Canada, you're filling out grants, you're getting declined on those grants because you really don't know what you're doing. So you're just like, okay, well, maybe, in 6 months we can afford to like go into the studio. And in the meantime, you're just rotting away on the vine, just so yeah, it was like a really in a long-winded rant. I really opening up old sores here.
Hmm. But I think it's important though.
It's
So
like
I,
yeah, it's like it's a grind, and musicians have it just even extra tough now. Like I really feel badly for young bands starting out because they're dealing with all that shit. They might be able to record music at home
mhm.
now cheaply, and put out some really good quality recordings now at home and not have to go into a pro studio, which is great. But the added cost of like inflation and gas and touring said recording is going to be where they get kicked in the nards,
Yeah.
in the junk.
But yeah,
So yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that though. I think that's important for people to hear. Because I think a lot of people can relate with that. One of my close friends, I hope he watches this. Shout out Nate Lewis. He's a drummer, and he's in two
Shout out
bands.
Nate.
Yes, he's in two bands, and he's been touring with another band and playing as their drummer as well. And they got they put together money to get a Sprinter, and they're going across the country touring, and they don't have a manager or an agent, so the they're all managing each other, and they're booking their their shows, and you don't know for sure if people are gonna actually show up once you go there, and it's a whole thing. But I do have to commend bands for going on tour because at least here in Seattle, a lot of hip hop artists who've been in the scene for a while, they don't really know what the steps are to go on tour. They may know the steps when an artist is coming to Seattle to tour and how to get, open up for them. But I feel like bands kind of have this inclination to know that you're supposed to kind of go on the road.
Yeah, like I said, that whole, I call it like it's such a double-edged sword. It's also a bit of a fallacy because going on tour, if you're not ready to deal with all the financial burden, is uh it could break up your band. It's demoralizing. There are music festivals, showcase festivals like South by Southwest, all that stuff. But even getting into South by Southwest, there's no guarantee. You might only have one showcase.
Mm.
The team members you're trying to maybe solicit attention from might not even show up. So there's a whole strategy on how to like get to one of those festivals and how to maximize your stay there. And some bands just aren't good at self promotion or networking. There might be one person in your band that's like super gregarious and outgoing, and they can kind of be tasked with like talking to industry people. But yeah, it's not easy. You need to really be kind of almost like a jack of all trades to kind of navigate today's musical landscape.
Yeah, 100%. So, and
My
then
advice to kids would be, unless you've got some mysterious like endless like stream of money, gold bricks, buried in your backyard, I would say that if you're playing in a band and it's a collective and it's a true a democracy, like everybody needs to know what their financial commitment to the project is going to be. Everybody needs to have day jobs and needs to, work their asses off and save your money. And it might mean like going out less to less shows. It might mean partying less. It might mean really pinching your pennies just so you can pool enough money so that when you do go on tour for 3 weeks, you're not distracted by the oh shit, if we don't sell enough merch tonight, not only are we not going to have enough gas money, but someone's sleeping in the van or outside on a fucking park bench or on the dirty hotel floor, or someone's not going to be able to make rent when they go home. Like all that stuff you need to figure out and get smart with your budgeting and make sure that you leave enough room for your creative endeavors, because playing in a band is just like playing in any team sport. It's gonna cost money, all that travel.
100%. So then you took a, how long was your hiatus from music when you were taking care of your grandma?
So um she was on like the like a pretty downward decline. Um, I moved to the Gulf Islands in January of 2013, and I think by 2014 she'd already been moved into a home,
Mm.
and I became kind of like the property caretaker between it being put up for sale and it finally closed. So I'd say from 2013 to 2014, I was taking care of her. And then there was another couple of years where I was just like living on my own. And that's like when the creative energy got like kicked to 11.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. And then I continued to live in the Gulf Islands, I'd say for another few, like 2013 to like 2000, like 19, like a good 6 years I lived
Wow.
there. And then I moved back to Victoria here. Yeah, in like 2019.
Mm. Yeah, I can relate. Not going to the Gulf Islands, but Alzheimer's runs in my family, so I've definitely seen
Mm,
a few family members decline with Alzheimer's, and usually starts out with dementia and then
I'm
Alzheimer's.
sorry to hear.
Yeah, it's hence his life. I hope I don't get Alzheimer's. God damn. That'd suck. But so were you really close to your grandma? Because you said you had siblings. Like, were they also taking care of her, or was it more like on you, or what was that like?
It wasn't like put on me. I kind of signed up for it. I was like, look, I
Mm,
need to get out of the city. I need to go somewhere and kind of reset. Maybe I'll go back to school. Maybe I don't know what I'll do, but I'm pushing 30. I need to figure something out. Um, so yeah, that was kind of the sort of the motivation going there.
mm,
But I mean, we used to go to that house as kids, and it was like a beautiful, like A-frame house up on a hill with an apple orchard, all like a huge like rose bush and a garden, and like yonder there was like a lake with trees,
mm,
big, tall, like Pacific Northwest. The fog rolls in during the winter time. It gets really eerie in the summer. There's tons of wildlife and deer and rabbits and the we used to go there and play as kids. We'd camp in the front yard. It's about an acre, all fenced in. It's beautiful. And when I kind of took over in January, it was like it looked like Sleepy Hollow. Like everything had died. The trees were on
mm,
their last legs, overrun by caterpillars, and the grass was about 3 feet high, and everything was just totally. It was like death was creeping in, and it was sort of like a metaphor for everything because it was just like she was not too much long on this earth,
mm,
and everything was sort of like sad and morose and depressing. So when she got put, like when the springtime hit, I was like, I'm gonna rent a bunch of garden equipment, and went to this like garden rental place and got like weed whacker and lawnmower, and I just like went to town, and I like cut all the dead tree branches. I built a little fire pit. I like pruned all like cut all the weeds out, mowed the lawn to like a putting green length. It just was like springtime, everything blossomed, the trees started to bear fruit. And it was like this really weird metaphor for like me kind of reinventing myself and breathing life into my sad little world that had existed before. And she got moved into a home and was being taken care of properly, and that was a great, like a positive, beautiful thing. And
mm.
she passed away like a few years later, but yeah, it was just like a good mental health reset. And yeah, it was like it just spawned creativity because I could get up in the morning in the summer and like have a cup of coffee and see butterflies and like bright greenery and flowers, and just go down to the orchard and pluck a pear and just like gnash my teeth into this juicy pear, and I'd be like, oh man, it's been years since there's like fruit on these
Mm.
trees even. Um, and so yeah, maybe I'll write some music today.
Yeah. So while you're in the Gulf Islands, do you have like jobs, or how did you maintain living during that
Yeah, I
period?
did some like odd jobs, and you know, nothing too nothing too fancy or backbreaking, but
Hmm.
I'd been putting money away, and um was able to kind of like save a little bit, but also you're not really going out. You're not really like spending money. It's like a really like it's like you're almost living like I don't want to say like a hippie, but you're not let's just say there's no like downtown nightlife
Mhm.
in the Gulf Islands. You're by yourself
Yeah.
essentially.
So how did the glam rock look come to be? And he said it's over now.
Yeah, so the glam rock thing. I mean, I just wanted to perform in a to strip out the sort of masculinity of rock and roll, and it just sort of evolved in an organic way. I think I've told this story many times, but I was like um on I was at the mall getting my keys cut, and I saw a wig store, and I was like, I'm gonna buy a fucking wig and I'm gonna
Mm.
wear it to this. It was the second show we'd ever played, and it was actually in Victoria too. And I put on the wig and put on some lipstick and wore a suit and tie. And my band was like, "What the fuck?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is how I'm going to perform for a little bit." And it ended up being like a kind of a 3-year experiment. But now with this new album, with After the Head Rush, just where I am, just a whole different level of um, my my outlook on everything and how things have changed. It's no longer like I don't know. I'm like a cisgendered heterosexual nearing middle-aged man. It's like I'm not part of this community and identity and gender and the politics of it all. Like it's not my story to tell. It's not transgressive. It's like it's kind of silly for me. It's like who am I to kind of like dress androgynously and try and sell myself as this like glam rocker in 2022? It just feels like a little passe. So
Mm.
respectfully, I was like, no, I'm gonna peel the veneer back and pull the curtain back and just showcase a more honest version of me, in full on bleach blonde hair.
Yeah, there we go. So when we were doing that, was it kind of like a wall for you, or did you feel alive, or did you like how did that make you feel when you were dressed up like that?
I
Did it
felt
keep you
the
like a barrier between you and people, or
No, I felt I mean, at first I felt alive, like it was exhilarating. It was like I said, it was transgressive. It was like all my favorite artists played with gender and androgyny and right up from like the early 70s all the way into like new romantic era. And there's like men wearing like blush and eyeliner to the bars. And I thought, I'm so influenced musically from this era. Why don't we just do something a little less ham-fisted, a little less like deep V-neck with like the chest hair and the piercings and the like, just like the whole like look of rock and roll is so cheesy to me. I thought like let's inject some fun back into it, and I don't know. It's just like an attempt to do something different and kind of like stand out and peacock a little bit because when you play all these shows and you play these festivals and you're seeing the same looking bands over and over and over again, it was like a violent reaction to that.
Mhm.
I was like, I hate all this. I'm so annoyed by this thing that I'm constant, this masculine kind of like RAWK rock and roll with like the tongue out and the devil horn. Like I'm just tired of that being representative of this genre that is so broad and so diverse, and I wanted to rebel against it.
Right.
But I was also like younger and angrier, and I've grown up now. I'm like a lot. I'm entering like the chill mode. I'm still angry about shit, but less so about that
Right.
being a hill I need to die on.
But it's kind of cool that you can see that, and I don't this to come off anyway than because I just don't have a better word. But it's cool that you can see that as a phase versus it being a thing where like you had to change your name and everything. Also, like some people when they try to make like a different type of album, they feel like they don't want to be really associated. Like Snoop Dogg, for example, he went by Snoop Lion when he dropped the reggae album. Why couldn't he just be Snoop Dogg? It's not like when you were doing that, you need to change your name. Like you're still
Like
Art
Chris
Deco.
Gaines,
Yeah,
Garth Brooks.
yeah.
Sorry.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, art is my birth name Deco is just obviously a stage name that's stuck with me for many years. And I mean, I already feel like that's kind of like a put on.
Mm.
But then associating like this this bob wig and the makeup and doing this kind of like Klaus Nomi meets emo Phillips weird clown look. I felt like it was a bit of a facade. It was the name change. Now
Mm.
it's like I don't need to do that, and I feel more Art Deco, the artist, the musician, the producer, the songwriter. I feel like that's kind of the representation I want to kind of go by.
Yeah.
Will I always have blonde hair? No, we'll change it up.
Mm.
Will I always dress like a little bit of a dandy? Yeah, I will.
I just learned the word. I don't know if this associates with you, but I was watching South Park the other day, and there's this whole episode. Do you know what? Do you know what metrosexual is?
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I've I've been accused and called a metrosexual many a times.
I just learned that word, so I'm like, I want to. So I can't classify you as a. Isn't metrosexual just like a straight person that dresses like gay or something, for lack of better
I
words?
know. I
Is
think
that what they said? I think that's what they said in South Park. I don't want to.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of a dated. I don't really. People don't really. It's like, oh, that's so metro. Yeah, that's like something people used to say like 10+ years ago.
Got it.
I don't know if that's like even a term. I haven't because now it's like if you see someone who's dressing a little bit effeminate or a little bit androgynous or a little bit like a dandy, I mean, to me, that's just chances are that's just they have good style.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You know what I mean?
You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I mean, I think it used to be used as like a pejorative, like, oh, look at that guy, he's so metrosexual. It's like the burbs, it's like the bridge and tunnel crowd
Okay.
accusing the downtown crowd of being like a little bit too city,
Mm.
you know? Whereas like if you're from the city and you look at like people in the suburbs that, you know, have like a giant pickup truck with like a pair of like steel testicles hanging from the license plate, you'd be like, oh God, go back to the you hicks, like go back to the country, you know. So there's like it's sort of the same thing too, but I mean maybe that person wears it as like a badge of honor and like so it's kind of like a classist thing. I almost think of it as.
Got it. Well, let's talk about your new album, After the Head Rush.
Speaking of bull testicles on pickup trucks, what a pivot.
I'm the best at pivoting. So, was this a kind of a change of pace for you too? This album compared to other ones, or what was the inspiration behind this project?
After the head rush was inspired by my move back home to Victoria, and having been away for so long, I was kind of like flooded, inundated with all these memories of my youth, going back to, you know, working in the kitchens and like, you know, listening to classic rock radio. And I just wanted to write something from lyrically from the perspective of like, you know, it's kind of a love letter in my youth.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of looking back on those memories, you know, it's like, hey, there's the parking lot I would get drunk in with my friends at, you know, on a Friday night when I was a teenager, and like, oh, there's there's that bush that I puked in, and oh, there's the skating rink, and there's the movie theater, and like all that kind of adolescent juvenile stuff, you know, the stories, and like, but also, you know, being someone who's in their, you know, 15, 20 years later, being in my mid 30s, kind of like that fatigue and that kind of like just the age worn sort of like cynicism of life just beating you down, like writing from that perspective. So there's like these two parallel lines, the old me and the current me, and it dances back and forth. Some songs are really playful and upbeat, and others are like from the perspective of like a sad old man approaching middle age and having a midlife crisis about it. But sonically, I you know, we went to like the Hipposonic, formerly Little Mountain Sound studio, which is where a lot of these albums, these aforementioned like big 80s rock albums were recorded. And it's like got some iconic gear there, and it has an iconic loading bay, which has been used on many, many rock albums for drum sounds and big gated reverbs. And I want to do something big and punchy and like a Bob Clear Mountain mixed 80s, late 70s rock album. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the whole like elevator pitch in like a really long elevator ride.
Hell yeah. And I think it's cool. It's a total different change of pace from in standard definition. It's even down to like the album cover. So that's kind of cool. Like to see like the differences there.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think yeah, every single album that an artist releases, it's almost like this. Um, it's like a final project that you
Mm.
hand in to your school teacher, and it's like you're gonna get graded on everything you learned that you culled and you pulled and you stitched together in this like book report. And it's like your final exam. You know, here's all the shit that I learned in the last 2 years about songwriting, about life, about myself, and how to express it, and how to kind of like, put it through this like musical lens. And here, I learned about all these new bands. I discovered jazz or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and I threw it into this blender, and here's that smoothie. Drink it down, and you get graded on it much like a book report. You get graded on it by critics, by fans, by listeners, and so that's kind of how I approach. To use like a really weird metaphor, that's kind of how I approach this album, the last album, Trespasser.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm always learning. I'm very studious. I like to kind of learn about music production, and I had to because I produced this album, and I didn't know still a lot I don't know about music production, but what a better way, to actually put it into action than just to use yourself as the guinea pig in your own musical compositions as the petri dish.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to learn how to compress or how to program this weird keyboard, and I'm going to use it in a song. I'm going to see the results in real time. That's what I'm learning.
But that's cool that you're still inspired to like learn different things with production and all that. Some people get stuck in their ways, so that's exciting. That's evolution.
Evolution, baby.
Yeah. So if there was a message to take away from this album for the fans, what would that message be?
That's a good question. I think the message is it really is the journey, and it's not the destination, because that goalpost constantly moves. The destination is sometimes the present disposition, that present tense. Like right now, I'm reflecting on an album that I put 2 years into,
Mm-hmm.
and I've kind of have a little bit of distance to the completion of it, and I've seen how it's been received by fans and by other people, and it gives you a little bit of context, but there's no like final destination. It's not like, oh, I need to win an award or I need to sell X amount of records. Like the just completing the album and it being exactly how I wanted it to sound was enough of a trophy for me. And now I get to move on and write and create continually and develop the story and thicken the plot on Art Deco. But yeah, making the album, it was only just like, let's just get this done. Let's get it sounding exactly how I and we want it to sound, and just enjoy the process, because there is no destination to this journey. It's just going to be a constantly moving, evolving one.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could have known that when I was a kid, because I always thought, okay, once I do this, then I'm going to be happy. It's like, no, now you've done that and you still are chasing that happiness. So enjoy the process and the moment, and take kind of stock with that, because sometimes it escapes you very quickly.
No, it's why do you say that? I swear my past few interviews, I've had everyone from, like I said, I just had Vox Rea on. They just performed at Capitol Hill Block Party. The other day I had Bo Johnson, who's a Seattle comedian, and then just talking to friends and family. It seems like the word I've been hearing the most lately is present, and I feel like at least the people I'm surrounding myself with, and I consider you someone I'm surrounding myself with right now, you know.
Digitally.
Yeah. And I feel like the people I'm surrounding myself with right now are all working on being more present, whether that's with their friends and family or on stage, because I don't think the everyday person realizes, like, sometimes whether you're a comic or a band or whatever, um, it's just like driving. Sometimes you forget you're driving because you've done it so much. So like, um, you as the fan might be hearing this song or joke for the first time, but that band or comic or whatever has played that a million times. So sometimes it can be a struggle for that creative to be present in that moment and give their all to the fan, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
I think people that I've been surrounding myself with are working on being present in their craft as well as their personal life. So maybe that's the universe telling me to focus on being present as well.
Yeah, hashtag be present.
Yeah, be present. With that, what is some advice that you have for up and coming artists, creators, influencers?
Oh man, I feel like I've spewed a lot of take it
Gems.
or leave it advice with this. If you really, really want to be a musician in this totally wacko, fucking ridiculous music industry, do it for, just gonna go back to doing it for the right reasons, doing it for yourself, doing it because there's this like unquenchable thirst to express your feelings through music.
Mm-hmm.
And there's tons of ways for you to learn how to play an instrument or write a song or learn music production, all free, all online. So there's no excuse. You don't need to um, be freakishly gifted to write a good song. You just have to chip away and work at it, and the songs will come. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah. And what is the easiest place? Where's the easiest place for people to reach you? And where can they find your album?
On all the socials, the usual suspects, artdecomusic.ca. And yeah, come say hi online. The album's out. You can buy it in your record store. I think they've just shipped a bunch of the white vinyl, white Obi strip. Those ones, there's like a second pressing on the way if you're a vinyl collector. If you're not a vinyl collector, that means nothing to you. Just go stream it.
Yeah.
Go stream it. And if you live in Seattle, Barboza, September 1st.
That's coming up.
Coming up. And if you live in Portland, we're playing Lose Your Mind Fest the next day, September 2nd, on a sick bill with the Dandy Warhols headlining. Very pumped about that. And then in Victoria, we've got Rifflandia Music Festival on September 16th. And a pretty sick announcement for some potential overseas gigs that are in the pipeline that I can't really talk about, but let's just say the fall's gonna be busy for moi.
That's awesome. You better stop at my studio when you're in town. Barboza is literally like 5 minutes away from my downtown, so you gotta stop by.
Okay, we'll set something up post.
Yeah. There we go. This has been the NAST podcast with
Art Deco,
and we did it.